Okay, hi guys. I am back with another video, and as promised, this time it is on immune, the hematopath section. Last time I uploaded a video in the breast benign lesions in cytopathology. So this time now I'm going to do a hematopath tutorial. I had taken the last lecture I had taken was on autoimmune hemolytic anemias, and this is a part of, or the AIHA is a part of the spectrum of immune hemolytic anemias. And I will show you a few slides from the text, again from the same source like Dr. Tejinder Singh's book and net. But what I would want to tell you in this case is that I will focus more on how to differentiate between specific immune hemolytic anemias. That I will discuss with you verbally as I go on with the tutorial. So without wasting too much time, because I've promised I will not exceed 10 to 15 minutes, at max 20. So let's move on. Okay, this chart is given in Tejinder Singh Sir's book, that Atlas and Textbook of Hematology. So you can go and read this chart. What I want to tell you in this chart is that if there is an autoimmune reaction going on in the body, which is causing the RBCs to break down, or any cell for that matter of fact in the body to break down, then it has to be either IgG mediated or IgM mediated, especially in hemolytic anemias. This is known, this is scientifically proven, hence this adage that when hemolysis of RBCs occurs at temperatures around 37 degrees, it has been seen that antibody G is detected, IgG is detected in the human blood. So warm antibody is usually the IgG type. And when the RBC is breaking in colder temperatures, then it is more commonly IgM, but there can be IgM or IgG both. Second point is whether to see whether the hemolysis is complement mediated or not. The warm antibody type is usually not mediated by a complement, only associated with basic antibody damage, while the cold hemolysis is also regulated by the complement mediated damage. Temperature I've told you. Drug related is more common, the warm type. And mechanism of hemolysis I've told you. One is complement mediated hemolysis, when the antibody binds to the RBC. The other is the binded, that is the cold agglutination, and the other is that the antibody, when binds to the RBCs, it gets those aggregates of RBCs, because of antibodies sticking on their surface, they get aggregated, clumped, and then they go to the spleen and they get caught in the splenic meshwork, and there they get destroyed. So one is kind of an extravascular hemolysis, the other is intravascular hemolysis. Anyways, now what is important to know over here is that anything that you take, be it a drug, be it infection, be it whether you have cancers, lymphomas, anything in the world can cause a hemolytic process. Viral infections can cause that. Bacterial infections less commonly, but they might cause it. But viral infections can cause it. Then cancers, hematological malignancies, non-hematological malignancies, both can lead to an autoimmune spectrum. So the spectrum of diagnosing an autoimmune disease is vast. As you can see, the warm type over here, again the thing is mentioned in the textbook. It can be idiopathic, and any and everything in medicine is idiopathic. Secondary causes, see, the list is so big. Even bone marrow transplants can cause autoimmune rejection. And then there's a list of cold antibodies and mixed type reactions, and then alloimmune, when outside something that you've taken from some other human being in your body causing the rejection. Autoimmune is when your own body the antibodies try to kill the body cells. Alloimmune is like the hemolytic disease of the newborn. The mother's antibodies trying to kill the child. Okay, so that is allo and auto. Auto means self. So important in autoimmune hemolytic anemias is the fact that you have to catch polychromatophils in the smear, NRBCs whether they are there in the smear, a history of any exogenous exposure leading to this autoimmune phenomena, and the best part to check that is gross examination of the EDTA sample received. If it is a cold agglutinin, You will get a history of key in winters or in rooms which have ACs on, etc. The moment you draw the blood coagulates. And how can you then ascertain? Just warm the blood to 37 and see whether that coagulation is getting corrected or not. And if it is getting corrected, then without even looking at the smear, you can make out that yeah, this has to be an autoimmune process. So these are the words like alloantibodies, placenta, placental, maternal antibodies crossing the placenta. Auto is non-specific, present in the body. Coombs test is very, very important, direct and indirect, which ascertains whether the process is autoimmune or not, and this is based on the principle of antibody reaction to the antigen. Okay, if antibody is present, it is going to react. One is where there is direct antibody antigen reaction and not direct Coombs test. The other is where we coat a surface with an antigen, then cause the antibody to react. That is the only difference. And of course, the methods can be tube, gel clad, or by flow. This you are going to read, and this is given in the text, so I'm not going into the details. I just want you to deal with the basic concept of how to catch whether it is autoimmune or not. And then, just for your interest, CLL has a lot of lymphoproliferative diseases, have a lot of autoimmune background to it. So alemtuzumab, another monoclonal antibody, is a treatment method used. And another thing that you're very commonly going to see is Evans syndrome. What happens in Evans syndrome is there's hemolysis and thrombocytopenia. So in a smear where you're getting polychromatophils, you might be getting spherocytes or schistocytes, and you find thrombocytopenia. Always, or maybe giant platelets with thrombocytopenia. Always think of something known as Evans syndrome. Okay. Again, now what are the findings that you're going to get in any PS of any autoimmune hemolytic anemia? You have to look for spherocytes. You have to look for these big macrocytic kind of cells. You again, a spherocyte over here and a macrocyte. Always make out a difference. See, this is a macrocyte and this is a spherocyte. Okay, NRBCs and polychromatophils. Again, NRBCs with basophilic stippling. This is HDN, hemolytic disease of newborn. This picture you will get in any hemolysis. NRBC, again I'm repeating, polychromatophils, NRBC, schistocytes. This kind of a picture you will get in any hemolysis. You might even get a leukoerythroblastic picture, especially in hemolysis associated with THAL, etc. When it is very severe, you might get a leukoerythroblastic picture also. You might get aggregates and clumps of RBCs on your smear, making it 100% confirmed that this has to be an agglutinin, causing the RBCs to clump and come as bunches of grapes in the smear. Okay, so these are the things by which you catch that this process can be a hemolytic process, and go for a corrected reticulocyte count. In such smears, go for LFT, serum LDH, nutritional panel if you want to go for. These are some important tests that you need to do in hemolysis. Again, the differences, hereditary spherocytosis. Look, you will get spherocytes in most of the hemolysis. Here you have to go for the molecular analysis, the enzyme analysis, etc. to be very sure that this is a hereditary and not an acquired spherocytosis. Again, I told you, bacterial infection, Clostridial sepsis, you will again get hemolysis because of complement activation and mediation, etc. Then Wilson's disease, HUS, TTP, CLL, Evans, I've told you. All these cases you're going to get hemolysis, and what you have to go back to is antibody testing, Coombs testing. Sometimes there are diseases like SLE, etc. causing this kind of a feature, then you go for an ANA, ENA panel. These are the tests that you have to go for. Then comes the investigation. The main important investigation is the Coombs test, and then there's something known as micro Coombs test for detection of lower level of antibodies. So when you see that these are cards, these are gel cards which are provided in every blood bank. See, this is for PNH where you get DAF, MIRIL, etc. You just have to see whether the coagulum is formed at the top or at the bottom, and that will tell you whether the test is positive or negative. This is for PNH where you see the smoky cola colored urine is there, and then there's iron deposition in the urine. Drug induced autoimmune, again this is a very simple diagram showing that either it is hapten is a incomplete protein which when combines with a cell becomes kind of injury, it can cause injury. by itself it will not do anything, but when it gets a medium to cause an injury, then only it'll act. It's kind of an inactive half protein. Okay, so when this goes and combines with an RBC, it can cause an antibody mediated injury. Or there can be something known as a bystander effect, that there's a drug and there's antibody to the drug, and this complex goes and attaches itself to an RBC and kills it. So RBC was an innocent bystander. Then drug might itself go and attach to the RBC, and then an antibody might come and attach. So there are three ways. Either the RBC was an innocent bystander, there was an autoimmune reaction occurring, and the RBC was like, the extra damage that occurred. Or the foreign antigen came and attached itself to the RBC, and then the antibody reacted. Or the antigen was in the body itself. It was a part protein which got attached to the RBC and became active, and then the antibody came and killed it. So these are the ways of hemolysis, especially the drug induced. Then they can be cryopathic. Again, you will see this kind of a coagulum as compared to a normal blood. These grape-like aggregates, NRBCs, spherocytes, the same principle. And PCH and CAD are the two important cold temperature autoagglutinates which you can see which lead to hemolysis. Alloimmune, I've told you, hemolytic transfusion reactions or HTN, where the antibody comes from outside, not created by the body itself. PNH, very, very important to remember. CD55, DAF and 59, DAF and Mirin. These are GPI anchored proteins which are deficient. Deficiency of this makes the RBC prone to any sort of damage, leading to hemolysis. These conditions mimic MDS, aplastic anemia. They can cause thrombosis, abdominal pain, bone marrow failure. I mean, PNH has to be thought if it's a pediatric or a young adult and you are getting features of bone marrow failure, features of hemolysis, thrombosis, always think of PNH and get the clones ruled out. The test you can do on flow apart from the regular lab test that you do, and the neutrophil and the monocyte have PNH clones on it. RBCs we don't use because if there is a transfusion, then there will be normal RBCs and the ones with PNH clones, and the percentage can get mixed up. So we don't use RBCs. What we use is the monocytes and the neutrophils to detect a PNH clone by flow. So PNH clones, they are PNH3 red cells. They lack GPIAP, PNH2 10% of the normal GPIAP, and PNH1 has total normal expression. So we then go for polymorphs and neutrophils and monocytes. And the classification, of course, it is classic or PNH with aplastic anemia or MDS or subclinical PNH, depending on the type of hemolysis. Then this is the summarization of most of the autoimmune anemias. You have to go for these tests: retic, LFT, LDH, and haptoglobin, which decreases because there's more of hemoglobin in the body because of hemolysis. And then you go for Coombs. If it is negative, you test with anti-IgA, IgM, and complement. Positive, IgG, C3d. When it is C3d positive, IgG negative, it is CAD. When it is IgG positive, C3d negative, it is autoimmune hemolytic anemia. This chart is given in the textbooks. You can go and read it. So I finished in 15 minutes. The takeaway from this tutorial is I've been maybe gone a bit fast. If you see polychromatophils, if the retic is raised, go for an LDH, go for an LFT, you can go for haptoglobin. Always think about an autoimmune process, drug induced, infection induced. Look for spleen. Always rule out PNH in pediatric and young adult cases with aplastic or MDS like features, or features of thrombosis, features of abdominal pain, or cola colored urine. So these are the takeaway. And always remember that samples of autoimmune hemolytic anemia can be temperature sensitive. Hence, always test a cold agglutinin at 37 degrees C by incubation. Okay. So I hope this is of some help to you. And I'll see you next time with the next cytopath tutorial on the malignant lesions of breast cytology. Thank you. Thank you.